Good evening to all participants. I would like to welcome you to this Red Lobster investment update. Joining us today is President and CEO Kuntirapong Chansiri and Group CFO Ludovic Garnier. This 55-minute session will consist of a presentation and a Q&A session, with at least 30 minutes dedicated to answering your questions. If you would like to ask a question, please submit written questions via the chat box to the Thai Union Investor Relations account. I would like to ask you to submit questions in English to help avoid any translation delays. Please note that all participants are muted to avoid any unnecessary background noise. I would now like to hand the floor to Kuntirapong.
Thank you, Adam, and thank you everyone for joining us today. As announced earlier, we confirm our intention to pursue an exit of our minority investment in Red Lobster. This decision follows detailed analysis conducted by our board and management team. The decision also takes into account Thai Union long-term strategic plan and the interests of our shareholders. Since the minority investment began in 2016, and despite significant operational improvement, the overall financial contribution of Red Lobster to Thai Union has been negative. This impact has been particularly significant in the last 3 years due to the COVID-19 pandemic and inflationary pressures, which have dramatically changed the US casual dining industry. The combination of these headwinds has impacted Red Lobster and resulted in prolonged negative financial contribution to Thai Union and our shareholders. After detailed analysis, we have determined that Red Lobster ongoing financial requirements no longer align with our capital allocation priorities, and we are therefore now pursuing an exit of our minority investment. While we will continue to explore available options for effecting this exit, we will record a one-time 18.5 billion baht or $530 million non-cash estimated impairment charge. This figure will be included in our fourth quarter 2023 earnings and reflects a write-down of our whole investment in Red Lobster. For Thai Union, this decision will allow us to focus exclusively on our core categories of ambient seafood, frozen and chilled, pet care, and value-added, which have continued to deliver improvement in profitability and gross profit margin. In light of this, we are confident that pursuing an exit of our minority investment position in Red Lobster is the right path for our shareholders. And Ludo will now share more, including walking you through the financial details in our presentation.
Thank you, Kuntirapong, and good evening, everyone, analysts and funds manager. So we wanted to start with the history of Thai Union and Red Lobster partnership. The customer-supplier relationship between Thai Union and Red Lobster started 30 years ago. In 2016, Thai Union took a 49% minority investment within Red Lobster, alongside prior owner Golden Gate Capital. The purpose of this investment was to increase the supply, to improve the operation, and to enhance Red Lobster international growth. In 2020, in the middle of the COVID-19 global outbreak, Golden Gate Capital decided to exit its position in Red Lobster, and Seafood Alliance and Red Lobster Management acquired their stake. While this reorganization did not impact Thai Union percentage of ownership, which remained at 49%, it resulted in Thai Union becoming the largest shareholder of Red Lobster. 2020 and 2022 presented significant challenges from the pandemic and its variants, which we will elaborate more on the following slides. Throughout its investment and even through the pandemic, Thai Union has consistently supported Red Lobster. Most recently, we provided a $65 million guarantee for the outstanding credit facility in 2022. Last year, a $2.8 million loan was provided to cure the EBITDA covenant breach as of August 23. In summary, this is a 30 years relationship, which began from a normal customer-supplier relationship, which then moved to a 49% minority investment and constant support during unprecedented and prolonged market challenges. So you can see on this slide on the left, a reminder of the shareholding structure of Red Lobster since 2020. Thai Union is the largest shareholder with 49% of the shares through a combination of preferred and common shares. Seafood Alliance is the second largest shareholder with 36%, and last, Red Lobster Management owns 15% of the shares. On the right, you can see the evolution of the investment value in Thai Union books since 2016. The blue line at the top represents the total value of the investment. The orange line below represents the value of the preferred shares, while the black line represents mostly the value of the common shares. Looking at the blue line, the initial investment in Red Lobster was close to $580 million. You can see the value was almost stable until 2021, and then decreased to $547 million in 2022, and now around $530 million expected for Q4 23, as per the guidance we provided at the end of Q3 23. And this is a result of two opposite effects impacting the common and the preferred shares. The value of the common shares has been constantly reducing over the years, from an initial $229 million to $74 million forecast for Q4 23. The reason for this decline is the share of loss from operations and from lease accounting that we do record every year. Opposite to this, the value of the preferred shares has been growing from $351 million to $446 million, thanks to the accrued preferred interest. Since 2019 and the adoption of the new TFRS standard on financial instruments, the value of these preferred shares is the result of a fair value discounted cash flow calculation. In 2022 and 2023, preferred interests were not recorded due to the increase of the interest rate in the US. So for you to keep in mind, the expected value of Thai Union's investment in Red Lobster as of Q4 23 is forecast at $530 million. Now let's move to Red Lobster contribution in Thai Union P&L since acquisition. You can see the first 3 years, Red Lobster was accretive for Thai Union's net income and earnings per share. The situation changed in 2020 with the first wave of COVID-19, when Red Lobster contribution turned negative for the first time. Then it went back to profit in 2021 and negative since then. I think you are used to this format as it is aligned with our analyst quarterly presentation. The first line represents the share of loss from operation. It corresponds to 25% Red Lobster net income. You can see the magnitude of the loss was under control from 2016 to 2019, with a share of loss between 100 and 200 million baht. The situation dramatically changed in 2020 with the first wave of COVID-19, when Red Lobster had to close most of its restaurants, causing a 1.2 billion baht loss. It recovered temporarily in 2021, then fell back to another 1.2 billion baht loss in 2022, with the Omicron variant and strong inflationary pressures. Over the first 9 months of 2023, the loss from operations amounts to 368 million baht, and our guidance for the full year, which was given for Q4, is a loss of 700 million baht. The second line corresponds to the share of loss from lease accounting adjustment. Just for you to remember, it's a pure accounting impact due to a timing recognition difference between US and Thai GAAP, with no cash impact. We told you this amount will decrease year on year from 2021 to 2030, and then after it will reverse. The third line mostly corresponds to our preferred interest, with an amount close to 1 billion baht from 2017 to 2021. Over the past 2 years, in 2022 and 2023, we have not recorded any preferred interest due to the continuous increase of the interest rate in the US. Then after, you see our related finance costs, which have been decreasing thanks to our various refinancing. The last is the income tax line. Red Lobster has always been generating some significant tax credit for Thai Union that we can offset with the tax expenses coming from our other activities in the US. Two key reasons for this significant tax credit. The first one is since the acquisition, but we have a tax goodwill, which is amortized and which is generating significant tax credit. Second, as a reminder, Red Lobster is a partnership, and as such, almost has no tax in their reporting numbers. So tax impact from the share of loss from operation and from lease accounting is being calculated and reported at Thai Union level. And now back to Kuntirapong.
Since third quarter last year, we told you we initiated a review of Red Lobster to identify areas for operational and financial improvement and to identify the path forward for Thai Union with this investment. As a result of this work, the board came to two possible and distinctly different options. Option one was ceasing additional funding at Red Lobster and pursuing an investment exit, while option two was continuing to support the business with additional capital. The management team and the board were aligned in the determination that option one was the best path forward for Thai Union. The key rationale for this decision was the following. First, it is our fiduciary responsibility that the board and management have to serve the best interests of our shareholders. Second was our commitment to financial discipline. We committed to our stakeholders since 2020 that we will not invest significant additional cash into Red Lobster. Third is consideration of our 2030 long-term strategic plan, which we have been working on throughout last year. This plan is about to be finalized, and you will hear more about it in our last slide, and also in our next fourth quarter earnings release. One of the key outputs we can already share is that Thai Union will focus on our core business going forward, without continued distraction from Red Lobster. Risk management is also an important factor as we analyze the risk and opportunity for each scenario and the likely financial impact to our shareholders. Finally, and as we have detailed, the market outlook was a significant factor in our decision, with significant macroeconomic headwinds persisting in the US and specifically impacting the US casual dining industry. And now back to Ludo for the financial details.
So based on the past year's financial performance, the tensions we mentioned around Red Lobster covenants and its cash situation, and the macroeconomic context in the US, we assume Red Lobster potential market value to be low in the short term, and we do not currently expect to recover the value of our investment. To be conservative, we are intending to impair our whole investment in Red Lobster, both the common and the preferred shares, with an estimated impact of 18.5 billion baht. The exact amount as of Q4 23 will depend on Q4 Red Lobster contribution, the actual one, and the related FX between USD and Thai baht. You can see on the left a simulation of the impact of this impairment based on our 9 months actual numbers, as the full year numbers are currently being closed and they are not available. The intention is for us to record this impairment in Q4 23, and it will be classified in other income between the OP and the EBIT. Thai Union consolidated net income over the first 9 months amounts to 3.2 billion baht. Should we add the estimated 80.5 Red Lobster impairment, then the pro forma net income would be a loss of 15.3 billion baht. Importantly, the actual calculation as of Q4 will also include the profit made by Thai Union over Q4, so it's only a simulation. As a matter of presentation, we are also discussing with our auditors about potential reclassification of Red Lobster contribution in IFRS 5 assets held for sale in our Q4 23 financial statements. This will not change the net income impact, but this could allow us to reclassify all impacts related to Red Lobster in one specific line, loss from assets held for sale, isolated at the bottom of our P&L in Q4 23. You may remember, we used the specific accounting standard, IFRS 5, also when we sold our fishing fleet in Ghana back in 2016. We expect the conclusion of our discussion with our auditors in the next weeks, but again, if accepted, this classification under IFRS 5 will only be a matter of presentation. The net income impact presented here will not be changed. So here you can see a simplified balance sheet. And again, starting from balance sheet at the end of Q3 23, as Q4 23 is currently being closed. The impairment will impact on our financial assets, with Red Lobster investment value being impaired to 0, and our equity will also decrease from the P&L impact. Few things which I think are very important to notice. The first, this transaction is a one-time transaction with no cash impact. The impairment will be made on our financial assets, not operating assets, so that it will not have any impact to our normal business operation. That means it will not impact our ability to generate income and cash, and our ability to perform all our financial obligations. Second, you can see our balance sheet, even after this impairment, remains extremely strong. Our debt level remains unchanged, and our net debt to equity, which amounts to 0.65 as of Q3 23, would amount to 0.84 pro forma after this impairment. This is still quite low level comparing to the other companies, or to our internal target level of 1 to 1.1, or even to our financial covenant, which is a maximum at 2. Third, by impairing the whole investment in Red Lobster in Q4 23, this will allow us to stop recording any contribution from Red Lobster starting in Q1 24. Given the fact that the contribution has been negative to our P&L over the past few years, we expect an accretive impact in our P&L from this investment exit. There are some other things we wanted to outline for you today. First, regarding Thai Union covenant. You know, the most common financial covenant for Thai Union bonds and loans is net debt to equity, which cannot exceed 2. You could see on the previous slide that the pro forma net debt to equity after impairment would be at 0.84, so still far below 1. So we are extremely comfortable with this ratio. Then we also have 2 old bonds with interest coverage ratio financial covenants. And you can see here on the slide the amount of the 2 related bonds with respectively 3.5 billion baht and $75 million. As per contractual definition, the Red Lobster impairment would impact the EBITDA. Due to practice here in Thailand, while we are talking here about a non-cash transaction, it will impact this covenant. So for this covenant, we will call for a bondholders meeting and we'll ask for a waiver to exclude this transaction from the ICR calculation. The second impact is related to our dividend. For 5 old bonds, we have a negative covenant where our dividend distribution cannot exceed 60%. For these ones too, we will ask bondholders for a waiver to exclude the Red Lobster impairment from the calculation of potential dividend to be distributed. The amount of these 5 old bonds is 13.5 billion baht and $75 million, which also includes the 2 mentioned ICR covenant bonds. For these 2 topics, The waiver will require 25% quorum and 50% of the votes of the quorum. We are confident we can get a waiver for these two covenants from our bondholders. Yet, we have also been considering a worst-case scenario where we may not get the approval for one of these bonds. Then in that case, Thai Union has sufficient credit lines available to repay them if needed. The second point on the right is related to credit rating. As already said, our view is Thai Union financial statements remain strong after this one-time non-cash impairment. This transaction will not have material adverse effects on the business, operations, assets, or financial conditions and credit profile of Thai Union Group. We have been presenting this transaction to TRIS, and we do expect some updates from them in the coming weeks. The last point is related to our 30 years customer-supplier relationship with Red Lobster. We do expect this relationship to continue even after the execution of the exit. And now, I will hand it over to Kuntirapong for an overview of our Strategy 2030 and his closing remarks.
Lastly, we wanted to give you a glance regarding our Strategy 2030 process, which is currently under finalization. This is the first time we share about it, and you will hear more in our fourth quarter earnings release. This plan provides direction, key priority areas, and the way forward for Thai Union. From the top, Strategy 2030 redefines the why. That is the vision and purpose for Thai Union. It is to become the world leading marine health and nutrition company. This means maintaining our position as industry leader while driving superior shareholder returns, building a diversified marine-focused portfolio, and staying committed to shaping the future of nutrition for human and pet. In the middle, we have identified three key pillars that guide us on what our focus area for 2030 are. The first pillar and our key focus is to defend the core and continue the growth area that generate cash, such as in ambient, to grow the category and explore strategic M&A in other European markets, as well as driving commercial excellence and revitalizing our brand strategy in the US. Our next focus area is next wave of growth, which outline the area which will grow to deliver sustained profitability through 2030 and beyond, such as in pet, to accelerate business and explore strategic M&A. And third pillar, which is more long-term, it outlines the new frontiers for growth in the long term, such as in pet services, to explore and expand into pet medicine, pet tech, pet-focused platforms. Lastly, we have identified and begun work on some critical must-do. This addresses how we can achieve the 2030 strategy direction. In short, we will focus on strengthening our enabler and building our capabilities. Most importantly, it will address ways to improve efficiency at Thai Union. In conclusion, Thai Union will focus on becoming the leading marine health and nutrition company by focusing on core business and select new areas of our future growth. Importantly, it was our clear determination that Red Lobster does not fit in either of these categories. And this is the end of our presentation. Today, we wanted to share with you this decision that after 8 years of being a minority shareholder in Red Lobster, our intention is now to pursue an exit from our investment. We must acknowledge that over the past few years, we have not been able to outweigh the significant industry headwinds, the prolonged higher interest rate environment, and the rising material and labor costs. The casual dining environment in the US has also dramatically changed compared to 2016 when we did perform the investment. As explained, we determined that the current fair value of our investment in Red Lobster is likely to be low, and it would be appropriate to write off the whole value of it. This impairment is a one-off, non-cash transaction and comes at a time of extraordinary balance sheet strength for Thai Union, where our net debt to equity ratio is 0.84. To prove Thai Union's strong financial position, the board has approved a share repurchase for financial management purposes not exceeding 3.6 billion baht or 200 million shares. We have concluded that this is the right path for Thai Union. We will face in fourth quarter 2023 with a temporarily negative impact, but we do remain confident that this investment exit will lead to accretive result starting in 2024. Again, Thai Union business and financial position remain strong with a low leverage ratio. You heard a bit today regarding our strategy 2030, which is currently being finalized. Through this, Thai Union management will advance ongoing strategy that strengthen its overall profitability and deliver long-term enhanced value for the group shareholders. We believe that the key takeaway of this updated strategy is to focus on our core business. With this investment exit, a significant step forward executing this strategy. More to come on strategy 2030 in our fourth quarter earnings release. I would like to thank you all once again for joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Kuntirapong and Ludo, for that update. We will now transition to the Q&A, where we have already received a number of questions, but I would like to remind you all to please submit your questions in English into the chat box to Thai Union Investor Relations. We'll now move on to the first question. The first question asks, why is this the best path for Thai Union and its shareholders?
The combination of sustained industry headwinds, higher interest rate, and rising material and labor costs have impacted Red Lobster, resulting in prolonged negative financial contribution to Thai Union and its shareholders. After much consideration, we have determined that Red Lobster ongoing financial requirement no longer align with our capital allocation priorities, and therefore are pursuing an exit of our minority investment. Since the minority investment in 2016, and despite significant operational improvement, the contribution of Red Lobster to Thai Union has been negative, and this impact has been particularly significant in the last 3 years due to the COVID-19 pandemic and inflationary pressures, which have dramatically changed the U.S. casual dining industry. This decision will allow us to focus exclusively on our core categories.
Thank you, Kuntirapong. Next, one of the participants asks, how long do you anticipate it will take to complete your investment exit?
So for the reasons we have outlined, we believe that pursuing an exit of our minority investment position in Red Lobster is the right path for our shareholders. We will not speculate on timing, but we will continue to work closely with Red Lobster and the advisors to ensure our ultimate exit is done in a manner that best serves all stakeholders.
Thanks, Ludo. And the third is a two-part question. The first part asks, why are you writing off the entirety of this investment? And are there no potential acquirers of your stake?
Well, given the continued negative impact on Thai Union result and the macroeconomic environment in the U.S. casual dining industry, we determined that the current fair value of our investment is likely to be low. And under principle of conservatism, it would be appropriate to write off the value of our investment in Red Lobster. The write-off will be recorded as a one-time of 18.5 billion baht or $513 million non-cash impairment charge in our fourth quarter earnings. And we will continue to explore all options for our exit of this investment. Regardless, Thai Union financial structure remain very healthy, with the company continuing to deliver improvement in profitability and gross profit margin.
Thank you, Kuntirapong. The next question is about dividends and asks, will Thai Union pay a dividend based on our 2023 performance?
So here we did share that we had a negative covenant capping the dividend payment to 60% of the net income. As we shared in the simulation, you will see the net income will be negative in 2023 due to this one-time non-cash impairment expense. So we are currently discussing with our lenders and bondholders to exclude this one-time impacts and be able to distribute some dividends based on 2023 performance. We will have a conclusion for this request before earnings release in February.
Thank you. And on to the next question now that asks, what was the trigger event for Thai Union to make this decision?
Since last year, we have been revisiting our strategy 2030, which center around Thai Union core business. And part of this review, Red Lobster was identified as a non-core. Red Lobster performance for the past 3 years has also not yielded positive contribution to us. And as previously disclosed in our third quarter, Thai Union and Red Lobster initiated a review of Red Lobster to identify area for operational and financial improvement. While we believe that Red Lobster will prosper over the long term, we determined that Red Lobster ongoing financial requirement no longer align with our capital allocation priorities. As such, it's our belief that maintaining our investment in Red Lobster no longer serve the best interest of our shareholders.
Thank you. And on to the next, another two-part question. Can you provide a more detailed outlook for how this exit will impact earnings going forward? And are you providing any updates to your guidance ranges?
Thanks, Adam. So here we say the minority investment in Red Lobster does not represent currently a positive contribution to Thai Union's earning. So the fact that we fully write off our investments in the fourth quarter of 2023 will allow us to stop recording any contribution from Red Lobster starting in Q1 24. As such, we do expect an accretive impact from 2024 from this investment exit.
Thank you. On now to the next question regarding the impairment charge, which asks, is the 18.5 billion Thai baht impairment taxable?
So you have seen that in the P&L that we have been sharing on the slide, there was no tax impact. So we are assuming we will not benefit from any tax credit from this one. We are still checking with our advisors if it is possible, but right now the most likely scenario is we won't get any tax impact coming from this impairment.
Thank you, Ludo. Now regarding the share structure that asks, do we exit both common share and preferred shares?
Yeah, the answer is clearly yes. So here we want to pursue the exit of the whole investment. And this is also why we decided to impair the whole investment. So the combination of the common and the preferred shares.
Okay, we have about 20 minutes left. If there are still further questions, please insert them into the chat box. For now, we go on to the next question, which asks, will the loss go directly to the P&L or the OCI?
So you have seen in our tentative P&L that it will go to the P&L. Okay, there is no way it can go to OCI, so it will impact our P&L. And this is why we said it at the end of the year, we will be in a situation of loss making because of this one-time non-cash impairment.
Thanks, Ludo. Lots of questions coming in. The next asks, do you actually sell the investment or do you just write it off? And if you do just write it off, when you sell at a profit, can we book a profit in the future?
So what we announced today, we announced our intention to sell the business. Okay, we have not sold the business as of today, to make it very clear, but we do record an impairment. Why? Because we are very realistic and very conservative, given the track performance of Red Lobster, given the macroeconomic situation also in the US. The likelihood for us to recover any value from this investment right now is very low. So I just want to manage your expectation. We are impairing right now the whole investment to be realistic and also conservative.
And I think, we also want to put Red Lobster behind us, and therefore there should be no more concern in the future going forward, starting from our first quarter 2024. So I do hope that you all, should now have no more concern and question going forward in the future.
Thank you, Kuntirapong and Ludo. The next asks, just to confirm, did you expect the 1.3 billion baht loss from Red Lobster at the last analyst meeting, which is different from the loss of 332 million baht at the end of the third quarter?
So here, remember, when we talk about the share of loss from Red Lobster, you always have two components. You have the share of loss from the operation and the share of loss from the lease accounting adjustment. So the 332 million baht, which is mentioned here, is just referring to the first line, which is a share of loss from operation. And our guidance for the whole year is a loss by 700 million baht. And the second impact is the share of loss coming from the lease accounting adjustment, where we do expect a loss between 300 and 400 million for the whole year. Okay, there was no change on this forecast for the whole year. But you need to combine both of them if you want to assess the whole share of loss coming from Red Lobster.
Thanks, Ludo. And the next question is a little bit similar to one we had before. It asks, are there any potential offers on Red Lobster already? At the time that we can divest Red Lobster, will it be a one-off gain on our P&L?
So there are currently some discussions which are ongoing. There will be a formal marketing process also to be launched. So at that time, we don't have different offers from Red Lobster. There will be a proper process from this one, a normal one. At the time, we don't want to speculate. So when we talk about the time we can divest Red Lobster, we will compare the value we get, if we get any value, with the value we have in our books. Okay. Right now, again, we record the whole impairment to make sure that we are conservative also and to be also realistic, because right now, given the low performance of Red Lobster over the past few years, given the macroeconomic condition in the US, we cannot expect to have a nice selling price for this business.
Thank you. And the next question asks about our current loss related to Q4 2023 because of Red Lobster. So will Thai Union still pay dividends for the second half?
So here we mentioned this one. I refer to the one specific slide on this one. So we told you we have a negative covenant on this one. There will be a huge loss in Q4 because of the impairment of Red Lobster. Yes, we will ask for a waiver for bondholders and lenders also in order to be able to pay a dividend. Okay, the conclusion of this discussion will happen before the earnings release by mid-February.
Thank you, Ludo. And we'll just give it a minute for other questions to come into the chat box. Okay, the next one asks, does the $530 million write-off include the $65 million loan guarantee and the $2.8 million term loan? If not, is there any risk of further impairment on those?
So the $530 million include the $2.8 million term loan. This is correct, but it does not include the $65 million guarantee. Again, if you remember, we told you that there were certain criteria to be met for the guarantee, the $65 million. We do believe we met and Red Lobster delivered all the conditions for this guarantee not to be executed. There were 3 conditions for this one: a certain amount of EBITDA to be delivered last year, and the appointment of the CEO and the CFO. We do believe we have been delivering the 3 conditions, so we don't expect the guarantee to be executed. However, we have not received yet the formal release from the lenders on this one. We are currently discussing with the lenders to receive formally the release. So just for you to keep in mind, the $530 million, yes, does include the $2.8 million term loan, but does not include the $65 million guarantee, because we believe this one will not be executed.
Thank you, Ludo. The next asks, what happens to your bank guarantee and the term loan on Red Lobster? Would you continue to provide further financial aid?
Well, once we decide to exit, it's clear that we will no longer provide any financial support. It's clear.
Thank you. Kuntirapong, now moving on to the next question, which asks, have we already received any preliminary interest in buying our Red Lobster stake?
I think at this stage it's too early. We told you there was discussion, there is no formal answer from this one. So we are just exploring all the options for us for the exit of the investment.
Thanks, Ludo. We have just under 15 minutes left of this call. We're continuing to go through all of your questions. Just give us a minute. We're just making sure that all of the questions are recorded. Okay, one more question that's just come in. If Red Lobster can find a new buyer, will Thai Union book gain from the sale of the investment?
So here again, yes, of course, if we can have a nice price, it will be a gain for us. Right now, this is not the realistic option. The realistic, given the track record, is the value will be very low. Keep in mind also that Red Lobster has a debt, so the first one to receive some fund will be the lenders. Okay, Thai Union will come only after the lenders, and this is why we do believe, given the current context and given the past performance, that we won't get a lot of value on top of the lenders. This is why we decided to write off completely the whole investment.
And we believe what we do is very conservative approach. That's why we want to take full impairment. And certainly if there is a gain in the future, then will be a gain. But that's not under our consideration at the moment. So I would think that you should focus on what we present you.
Thank you both. We're just scrolling through the questions because there are some that are repeating. Okay, so the next question is, with the negative net profit, does it breach the bond's covenant? What is your plan if the bondholder vote to recall the loan? And then thirdly, how much bond outstanding does Thai Union have that breach this covenant?
Well, I can only provide you based on the fact. And you all know, this is one-time non-cash transaction. And it doesn't have any adverse effect in our business, in our operation. And with our balance sheet remain extremely strong at 0.84, there should be no reason why bondholders would not provide a waiver to us. Having said that, the total amount of the bond that we have breached the covenant, the amount is 16 billion baht. We have an available credit line of 29 billion baht available. Therefore, we have enough facility to pay back all the bond if needed.
Thank you very much. Just allow us now another minute to scroll through the other questions. Okay, one more question that's just come in. When Thai Union plans to exit the business, can you share the direction of your strategic consortium that joined you in 2020?
So just for you to remember, the consortium is made up with Thai Union, Seafood Alliance also owning 36% of the shares, and Red Lobster Management. So this is a question to be addressed to them, but right now the direction from Seafood Alliance also is they are intending to sell also their shares. Red Lobster Management, of course, is a bit different because these are the managers of Red Lobster, so they are part of Red Lobster. So that will be a discussion regarding the structure of the exit moving forward.
Thanks, Ludo. Okay, we're coming towards the end of the call, just a few minutes left. So we'll just leave it for the opportunity to ask one or two more questions. Okay, so the next question asks, since Thai Union just only wrote down the investment, but still did not divest the shares yet, does Thai Union need to continue recognising the share of loss from Red Lobster going forwards?
So by writing off completely the investment at the end of Q4 23, we don't have any more to record any contribution from Red Lobster starting in Q1 24. Okay, and this is also one of the reasons of the decision to say Red Lobster is behind us, and we move also to a clean situation. So starting Q1 24, you should not expect any more share of loss coming from Red Lobster. Of course, you have seen over the past few years, Red Lobster was presenting a negative contribution. So overall, we do expect an accretive impact in our performance starting in 2024.
Thank you, Ludo. We've got another question regarding the seafood consortium, but I think we've just answered that previously. Okay, so maybe moving on then to our last question, which asks, do you expect any negative business impact, such as less sales in the US or extra expenses when you actually exit?
Well, I do not expect any negative business impact because first, relationship between Red Lobster and Thai Union will remain in place the same. And with our exit from Red Lobster, it would even allow us more opportunities to work with other restaurant operators. So to me, I'm not expecting any impact from this exit. And the expense?
No, the expenses I think should be also under control. We don't expect any significant expenses coming from this process. Of course, we are always careful, but we don't expect something significant here.
Thank you, Kuntirapong and Ludo. Last opportunity to ask any other questions. Okay, last question that's just come in. person asks, what impact does the investment exit have on Thai Union's other US operations?
Well, again, as I mentioned earlier, only our frozen business in US that have relationship with Red Lobster. And we do believe that our relationship with Red Lobster will remain the same. So I don't, again, expect any impact from this exit.
Okay. One more question snuck in before the end. Will ending the investment partnership impact Thai Union's supplier relationship with Red Lobster?
And again, as I mentioned earlier, we don't expect any change or impact for our relationship with Red Lobster from this exit.
Thank you very much. So I believe that is all of the questions that we have received. I would like to thank Khun Tirapong and Ludo for both the presentation and the answers in the Q&A session. That concludes this important investment update on Red Lobster. As a kind reminder, please note that our corporate silent period starts on the 18th of January and runs until the 19th of February. If you have any further questions regarding this update, please reach out to the Investor Relations team. And thank you once again.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.